commercial versus residential, when to get into commercial roofing.
But I think a lot of people start getting the desire to get into commercial roofing because they see, a big job getting done and they're like, why can't we do that? Now I'm starting to do these bigger jobs and I screw up a job. What's it going to cost me? 100,000, 200,000, 500,000? If you're not ready for that, you maybe shouldn't be in this world yet.
Hey, how's it going? It's Tim Brown, and this is the Hood Better Leads podcast. And today I have Paul Reed on. And the name of your company, I know you do Commercial Roofing Academy, but what's the name of the roofing company?
Northwest Roofing.
Northwest Roofing.
Northwest
legend, really. I mean, I've literally had tons of people say you should talk to Paul Reed. Today we're talking about commercial versus residential, when to get into commercial roofing. I know a lot of people try to make little commercial divisions, and I'm guessing if you're versus them, you usually eat them up on jobs just because, having a specialty is very good sometimes. My first question is just like a little bit of your background though. Why are you kind of looked to as an industry leader? What have you done so far?
So I've been in the roofing industry. This is actually my 31st year of being in the roofing industry. So since I was 18 years old, been in the roofing industry. So I'm kind of the old man now of being in. I think one of my advantages that I have, and I think why a lot of people maybe come to me or relate to me, is I actually have a roofing background. So the first 15 years of my roofing career, I was the guy on the roof actually installing, running crews and doing all that. So there's really no roofing system besides a hot tar. That was the only roofing system I haven't personally done, literally thousands of squares of. So I think that was one of the things. And then, I think social media has definitely, kind of put me out there for whatever rhyme or reason, kind of got known throughout the country in roofing from social media and being on different stages and different conferences and, speaking at a lot of those and doing things. I think that's kind of how I probably got known throughout the industry.
Love to hear it. So let's say I'm a roofing company that's thinking about pursuing commercial.
Yeah.
Why or why not would you say to try, or when not to try?
Yeah, great question. I think that the reality is most roofing contractors, especially like in the storm industry, because let me back that up just a second. There's really kind of two types of roofing. There's what we call, what most people that maybe me watching this channel are like actually storm restoration guys. They're kind of may have an office, may be a brick and mortar office, but they're more kind of a paper company, that chase hailstorms, windstorms, hurricanes, tornadoes.
I tend to think that we're a little bit heavier on the retail side for the viewership of. Yes,
hey, we're perfect because I love that.
Yeah, so just to be clear, like I kind of talk shit about storm sometimes. So just for fun, I don't really. I love both. I think insurance restoration is great. I just ultimately, because who we serve is a little bit more local roofing companies because we're search focused. So that's why our clients tend to be retail, or at least have a good chunk of retail because they're a little bit more anchored, so they have to,
I love that because now we're talking with real roofing contractors.
Yeah.
Now we're talking with the real roofing contractors. So absolutely. I love that. But, because there's a huge difference. Most people don't really realize that. But I think most companies, they do want to get the bigger jobs. They've been successful going around, doing the 25, 35 square residential roof, and they see all of a sudden apartment complex getting roofed, and they're like, man, I would love to roof that. Like that's kind of the pinnacle. So I think a lot of people start getting the desire to get into commercial roofing because they see, a big job getting done, and they're like, why can't we do that? And
I talked to a guy yesterday who was,
Mm-hmm.
I was at an Atlas event, and he just showed me on his phone. He said, look at this job I signed yesterday. And he was like, it was 800,000. And I was like, what does that mean for your personal income? And he said like 80 or something. Anyways, yeah. I'm blown away by the numbers. Like for me, 80, like 7 years ago would have been like, that's the year, you know what I mean? For my whole year. So it's just kind of wild to think about how big of the numbers can get on the multifamily and commercial side. And so is
Listen,
that what
they
people
could be.
see, the big numbers, money signs in their eyeballs?
They do because some residential roofs, call average commission, couple thousand, $2,000-3,000, and all of a sudden they sell this great big job. I've seen guys sell some of these jobs that are literally life-changing jobs, that like almost break generational chains or curses of being poor or whatever you want to say, right? And people are able to, on some of these rips, they're making $200,000-300,000 a lot of times. A salesman could make on one of these jobs, in one check. I don't care who you are, that's a life-changing moment. So
Oh yeah.
I think financially, I think that's the drive for a lot of guys to want to get into commercial. And they're thinking, well, I could roof this job, I could maybe roof a bigger one. So that's kind of where it starts for most people. And we kind of warn against jumping in, because there's a lot of things that you don't realize, as far as cash flow and, different production methods and all of those reasons why you need to kind of, hey, let's slow down and instead of running in and going head first, let's slow down and build the foundation and the base, and that's one thing I really preach.
So the foundational elements, what are the foundational elements that people need to have in place so that they can actually have a real commercial company?
I think, as odd as it sounds, I don't believe, and especially in the storm side, most retail guys, I think, are a little more sophisticated in the business aspect. I think that one of the issues we have in the roofing industry, most roofing companies, and you've been around, Tim, for a long time and see a lot of companies, but most companies don't really run their company. The company's running them, and they don't really understand the cash flow side of it. That's a huge issue that we have, is people don't understand their own business. A lot of companies were running multi-million-dollar a year companies, and we're still running them as a mom and pop business. And I'm not knocking a mom and pop operation, obviously, but if you look at the whole grand scheme of things in the world, like how many companies in the world actually do over $1 million a year in revenue?
Mm-hmm. It's like,
I think
it's like 15 or 10% or something like that. Like out of all
my stats is low single digits that
Really?
depending on where you Google. All right.
Yeah.
Places that I've looked,
how few? Yeah.
it's very few. So
Yeah.
let's just call it 5%.
Okay.
Right. Out of all those companies that do that, the majority of those, I would say 99% of every company in the world that's running over $1 million in revenue, they're running kind of on a sophisticated level for the most part. Maybe you have a CEO or a COO or a CFO. It's generally not being run out of your garage. We understand our numbers. We understand, all the way down. I mean, very granular on our numbers. And I think that most of the companies don't have that in place. So that's why I warn so heavy about, let's build this foundation and actually know what's going on in your own company. Just because you're doing a couple $1 million a year in revenue and, you pulled a couple $100,000 out doesn't really mean that we're sustainable, right? Because what happens when a storm doesn't hit? What happens at that point?
Yeah. And you talk about, before we jump into commercial, make sure the foundation's right. I think part of it too is like, basically, I can see this in our type of business. When I was at a previous company, they would do large jobs. They would try to they would bid on a large job. It was different. It was like web development, right? But the point is, like, we'd bid on a large job, but we didn't have the technical skills to manage or ensure, like, they were going to outsource it. And it literally, like, this was one of those defining moments for me that made me want to have my own company. Because I was like, we all have them, right? Like, yeah, that was a resentment that I had. But the point is like, I was like, I am going to be the one that has to clean this up. You know what I mean? I'm the web developer. I don't know how to do that work. And we could become, it doesn't matter how big the price tag is on the revenue side. If we get that job, we could be wildly unprofitable. Because the bigger the price tag, the more unprofitable it could be potentially.
Absolutely, man. And here's the biggest thing about it. I talked to a lot of roofing contractors all across the country, a lot of residential guys, And, I have some guys I say, have you ever messed up a job and you had to completely redo it? And, there's a few that are like, no, we haven't messed up a job. But the majority say like, yeah, we've had to redo a complete job. To the guys that haven't had to do it yet, you will. That just means you haven't roofed enough houses yet.
Yeah.
Right. Eventually you're going to screw a job up. So in residential, worst case scenario, if I have a 30 square job and I screw it up, let's say I put the wrong color on, or the crew didn't fasten it properly, blah, 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 whatever, and I had to replace the roof. Worst case scenario, it's going to cost me $6,000 or $7,000, right? I'm going to lose 6,000, maybe 10,000, right? Sure. Worst case scenario, I'm going to lose $10,000. Yeah. But if I get it now, I'm starting to do these bigger jobs and I screw up a job, what's it going to cost me? 100,000, 200,000, 500,000?
Yeah.
I have jobs that we've screwed up that cost me $300,000-400,000.
Jeez.
And if you're not ready for that and able to do that, you maybe shouldn't be in this world yet, right? Like, that's where I'm saying we need to kind of build up and maybe, get a little more money in our pocket and savings or things like that, because it's roofing. Problems happen, leaks happen, crews mess up, whatever happens, you could be in severe trouble.
So you should have some bank, and you should probably have some lines of credit, I'm guessing, as part of that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we're not waiting on Mrs. Smith to write us a check on Friday for, $6,200. I'm waiting on a draw from whatever management company that owes me $648,000. And I've already spent all that money from paying the crews, paying my material, and all of those issues. So it could definitely become a huge issue, cash flow.
So as far as, do you have to because you have done these types of jobs, like you've done TPO on a roof and stuff like that. If you're a roofer who grew up in, let's say, residential, and you mostly worked with shingles and maybe a little metal or something like that, do you have to learn these commercial roofing systems down to a technical level for you to do this profitably? Let's say you have, $1 million in the bank, so you're ready for some risk or something like that. Mm-hmm. But do you have to study this to the point where you could put it on yourself to get into this business?
Absolutely. So I've seen guys, that do it, and they somehow make it through because maybe their crew knows how to install it or blah, blah, blah. I feel that the successful companies that are out there that are doing it, they understand the technical issues. Because like in a TPO roof system, there's something like 76 different ways that you can install a TPO roof. In shingles, there's one way. Go put nails in the damn thing, right? Put some step flashing, right? It's not that technical.
Maybe two with the layover.
Right. Yeah. There's a handful.
Yeah.
But I believe that you need to learn the roof system.
Yeah.
I say that all the time, and because listen, I say this: if you move to France, right, and you're going to be in France the next 5 years, are you going to learn French?
Yes.
More than likely, right? You're not just going to point at items on the menu and hope that you got whatever it was. You don't know. You're probably going to learn the language because this is where you live now. So we're in roofing. So how do we not dig in and get with suppliers and manufacturers, or go to different events and learn all about what we're doing?
I think it's a dabbler mentality. That's what I think it is. And frankly, some of my favorite guys dabble. You know what I mean? And so let's just talk to them for a second. Because there's folks that do little commercial jobs here and there, right? That's 5% of their business. Would you tell those guys to stop dabbling? Because I could see the benefit of that, right? Those probably aren't your most profitable jobs if you're doing just dabbling.
Because it's guesswork at that point. It's guesswork.
And sometimes
absolutely.
we get the worst jobs because the people that were specialized in commercial didn't bid that hard on that job. You know what I mean? It wasn't the best job. It's kind of a small job or whatever.
Does your company want to build your brand and get more jobs in the neighborhoods you're currently working in?
The Brick by Brick playbook allows you to establish your brand, your reputation, and gain trust in any neighborhood in your service area with a series of 4 postcards sent once a week to the neighbors of your current jobs. If you want to get more work in the neighborhoods you're currently working in, get with the team at Dope Marketing and get your Brick by Brick playbook set up today.
No, it's absolutely. I think when you start looking at some of these commercial deals and you're kind of dabbling in your guesswork, and you're throwing a bid out there and you're saying, well, it's 200,000 and we could do it, blah blah. Hopefully I make $30,000 on it. You don't really know. I think the more sophisticated companies, and when we get in commercial, it gets a little more competitive. It comes down to dollars and cents a lot of times. And if I could look at the same roof system, but I understand and I know how to build that roof better, more cost effective, more efficient, and I could come in at 195 and make a better margin than that guy that was bidding it too. That's a powerful thing.
That is beautiful, and I think that's ultimately like what happens in storm markets too. Sometimes the local guy doesn't need to gouge because he'll be there and he wants his reputation to be good, and then the storm guy comes in and tries to I'm like away from my family. I got to make this worth it. This $20,000 job is $30,000, and then that's kind of how roofers sometimes get a bad name, right? Like there's a little bit of, and that could happen on the commercial side. It sounds like I also been on a few, commercial roofs. There's let's say we're in the middle of tear off or whatever. What do you guys call that? Is that same thing?
Same thing. Yeah, tear off. Yeah.
Tear off, and then there's layers underneath. They're like soggy, but this is like a bigger problem than a residential tear off, right? Like when you start looking underneath and see just crazy water damage, I'm guessing that can start to be way more expensive than just replacing some decking.
Well, it's not. Yeah, you're not running to Home Depot and spending $76 on decking. At that point, you might be spending $76,000. Yeah. Because you dabbled and you didn't really understand your whole job. And this is what we do for a living, right? Like again, if I move to France, man, I'm going to learn the language. So if I'm going to be in roofing, it's not that hard. It's not rocket science. It's basically all we're trying to do is keep water out of a building.
So talk to me about the commercial side with insurance. How do you guys, let's say somebody, I'm doing this for me because I'm very curious, right? But let's say somebody was trying to get into it, but they're trying to understand how much is insurance work? Is most of it insurance work? Is there quite a bit of retail still? I mean, it's just such big numbers at that point. It's hard to imagine that your average business has an extra $500,000 for their re-roof.
Well, it surprised me, right, when we jumped into it. And, we've been say the last 5 years in Denver, all the commercial work, and I've done tens of millions of dollars of commercial work in Denver over the last, 5 years without a storm. And it's all been retail. There's different things. Sometimes like a strip mall, it's leaking really bad. All the tenants are complaining. They have no choice but to go ahead and do that. Then there's other things, that won't really get into that, on multifamily, that when they're refinancing and they're redoing all those things, they're trying to spend money with their CapEx money. So a lot of times they're spending
money. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I like
so
that.
they're fine spending $2 million on this roof, because they need to spend that money.
Do you mind going a little deeper on that topic? Because that's an interesting one, and then we'll keep going. Because I think that's interesting. They have to spend money because what is it?
Well, it depends when they're refinancing. So, the way that a lot of these guys are set up, they're all investments. That's when someone owns a commercial building, what that actually is, that's an investment, right? They don't just own it because it's fun. Like they're hoping to turn an ROI on their investment. They bought it at X and they're trying to run it for however many years and then sell it for a profit. So there's different models, and there's different property management companies or ownership groups, REITs, real estate investment trust people that, they'll look at, say, a multifamily property, and they're going to come in and they're going to say, try to buy this property for, say, $10 million. And, they funded it, and then they're going to come in and they're going to borrow against that. And they're going to come in, and what they're trying to do is raise their rent number. So when they bought this property, it's renting at $1,000. So what they do know is if they go in and they invest X back into this property, a couple $1 million into putting, say, a new roof in, new landscaping, maybe remodeling kitchens or whatever, they're going to raise their cap rate and their rental to, say, $1,500 a month. And so they have this money that they've pulled from the banks or wherever they're getting their money, that they need to spend that on the capital improvements.
Does that like also relate? Maybe I'm just off base here, but does that also relate to decreasing like their taxable liability too, or is that not related?
Yeah, there's all of those things too. I mean, these guys they know how to make money.
Yeah, they're
right?
crazy. Like they're basically like trying to pay zero taxes half the time.
Absolutely, yeah.
I understand and respect.
Yeah.
And then like you were kind of going on a list of different reasons that there is quite a bit of retail and it's not all insurance. Is there anything else that you...
Yeah, because listen, and a lot of insurance work that gets paid for by the insurance company in different markets, it turns into retail anyway. You take the Denver market, if we got hell again, because we've had so many storms in the Dallas market, their deductibles now, like on you get a storm damage from a hailstorm, their deductibles may be 5 or 10%. So you have a property and all of a sudden their deductible to replace these roofs is a $2 million deductible. The roof was $1 million job. Yeah. So it turns retail anyway. Yeah. So we need to learn all about roofing because we need to bid. Most roofing companies, and especially on the storm side, they only know how to write an Xactimate. Yeah. But they don't actually know how to bid a roof, a retail bid.
It's always kind of funny when you see retail guys that like, for whatever reason, are writing Xactimates. They're like, this stuff, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
It's so weird because I hear different things. Like people say that storm is way more lucrative. And then other people are like, I'm trying to write an Xactimate and these numbers are just off for our market. So I think it might depend on where you are in the country. But from your point, which one is more lucrative on average?
Brother, it's where you're at in the market, where you're at in the country. So in Denver, storm is way more lucrative than retail. If different areas that I work across the country, retail is way more lucrative than storm. It just depends. And I've never found out a rhyme or reason why it's that way. But sometimes, like back east, you could charge $700, $800, $900 a square for shingles. If I'm in retail in Denver, I'm charging, $375, and if I'm writing a good Xactimate, I might be $450. Yeah, and they're getting paid double, back east.
I've heard roofers banding together and saying, "Hey, insurance companies, this line item on Xactimate is actually just completely incorrect for our material."
Yeah, but they talk about it, but I've never seen anybody make that much of a difference. I've heard people that have done it. Yeah. Anyway, hasn't been my experience.
Okay, and then also like. It is crazy when you see somebody like you're saying out east where there'll be a company that comes up and they're young and they do a crazy amount of revenue and then everyone like in different areas of the country will be like, there's no way. But then you look at the average job and it's like, yeah, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
These jobs are big, even for residential, like just the numbers look crazy. And commercial, in your experience, what are a few things that you would say you need to check these boxes? I know we're talking about having cash to cover a loss or like a redo. Yeah. So what else would you say is like something that like people should have in place before they take that jump? And I guess we also already said that you want to be able to do the work or at least like quality control the work, know about the roofing system. Anything else you'd say really is like a crucial fundamental?
Absolutely. So your general liability insurance for one. Most roofing contractors are extremely underinsured. I found out, luckily I was extremely lucky and nothing ever popped up on me. But when we first started, we did a whole bunch of like HOA work or multifamily stuff for like a first year. We realized at the end of the year that we actually didn't have insurance because our insurance didn't cover duplexes. Right. And what are HOA? A lot of HOAs are like duplexes or triplexes. Yeah. So there's different riders in your insurance policies. So understanding your insurance, making sure that you have a good agent, that knows what work you're doing and you're fully insured, that your crews, if you require insurance from your crews, that they actually have roofer insurance, that it's not like for some drywall company, because they'll do things like that. So understanding your liabilities and really learning about how you need to protect yourself.
Awesome. Any other items that you'd say get this in place before you go this direction?
The financial end, the insurance end. I think it's also a mindset as well. with the mom and pop deal where I was talking about that
Yeah.
earlier, making sure that you are kind of a sophisticated company, that you do understand what's going on, and also kind of the time frame of sales. In residential, you could go out and knock some doors, be it retail or insurance, and you might be roofing the house next month.
Yeah.
In the commercial, the average cycle of a job, I would say, is a minimum of 6 months.
Yeah.
So the length of time it takes you to get a job, and then you get it, and then it takes you a month to roof the damn thing.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's really important. So have some runway and some time to. And I'm guessing the lead gen methods tend to be wildly different than residential as well.
It's time you rethink roofing. Okay, so Refresh, Repair, Restore is not just spraying oil on a roof and rejuvenating the roof. We go in and we soft wash the roof. We have to get rid of that algae because that algae actually takes root in your shingles and is tearing your shingle apart on a micro level. So we clean that roof, we get it spotless. We do the necessary repairs that need to be done to your roof, and then we rejuvenate it and bring it back to life.
Make repairs profitable. Offer rejuvenation. Uglyroof.com.
I mean, yes and no. There's still call centers, that do lead gen. There's still, whatever. We found that we would say in our experience, the majority of business that we get are built off of relationships.
Yes.
With different property management companies or REITs or people like that. So building relationships is a key.
I mean, I don't want you to have to give away any of your secrets here or anything, but
Okay.
How would I start to create those types of relationships? Like where would I go? It's probably not BNI, you know what I mean? Like, where do we go to meet these people?
Yeah, so like for the most part, you're never just going to go walk into a multifamily apartment complex and say, "Hey, hi, I'm a good roofer and I'd like to replace your roof," and they're going to let you.
Yeah.
Right. Those type of things, we recommend that you start out by building a repair department.
Ooh,
You
yeah.
know, we talk about that a lot in our commercial roofing academy about a business, to start out, we recommend doing repairs and starting to build that relationship that way.
Yeah.
Out of all I've personally probably sold 50 apartment complexes across the country myself over the last however many years. One time out of the 50 that I personally have sold, I walked in and was the owner of that apartment complex there.
Yeah.
And I got so lucky. It was just a weird deal. She happened to be there and I sold her a roof the first day. That'll probably never happen again. Otherwise, we need to build the relationship. We recommend the repair department.
I love that. I'm not going to lie. I love repairs as a strategy in general for business development and relationships and
And
reputation.
they're profitable. Yeah.
Yeah. Creating a profitable repair department is good for
Yeah.
all roofing companies from what I could tell. What else? What do you got going on right now? What can we have something to share about? What would you like people to check out of yours?
Well, I'll tell you that my biggest passion is what we do with Roofers in Recovery. So with Roofers in Recovery, it's a nonprofit 501c3. We started, 3 or 4 years ago. And through our foundation, we send men and women in the construction industry, roofing industry from all across the country. When they're struggling with drugs or alcohol, we send them to a rehab that we pay for through our nonprofit. And most excitingly, we purchased a building a few months ago. We're in the process of remodeling it, doing all our licensing and all those things, where we'll actually have our own facility and our own rehab that we'll be able to send people to.
Just a concentration of drunks that are roofers as well, all in that one spot. I can only imagine it's going to be rowdy.
It could be. It could be. No, usually when a guy is trying to get sober, they're usually pretty beaten and down on life. So yeah.
I've been there. I was uncharacteristically calm, I guess.
Yeah. Yes.
Humbled is what
Humbled.
happens. Yeah.
Most of them are pretty humbled, at least for the first week, and then they start feeling better.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to give to that, it's roofersinrecovery.com.
Roofersinrecovery.org. .org.
Right.
Yes.
Check
Someone
that.
hijacked our .com and tried to hold us ransom and charge us like $10,000 to get it back, and so we just started .org.
And then the Commercial Roofing Academy, is that the .com?
Yes. So yes, commercialroofingacademy.com. Every 2 months, we bring in 40 to 50 contractors from all across the country that are trying to make that transition from residential into commercial, or guys that are doing a little bit of commercial right now and want to get better. So that's a year-long program that we bring people into, and we've had unbelievable success. The guys that have taken our methods and put into their company, and they've just blown up with it.
I love it. I want to give a little golden nugget here at the end for anyone that decided to listen all the way through the kind of the promo at the end there. So my question to you, my last question is, so you're at, I don't want to say your revenue, but you're at multiple tens of millions of dollars, and you've got a pretty slim staff comparatively to most companies doing that. So office staff, salespeople, etc. Do you have a reason? Because you could probably scale that. I'm guessing you could scale bigger. I just kind of like knowing you and knowing the commercial. As you're scaling, you're like, is there a sweet spot that you are kind of trying to hang out in, or are you trying to grow this still? Where are you going with this? What's a sweet spot for a commercial roofing company?
Okay, I'm going to back up just a second though, because where we thrive with like the smaller staff, right? Where we thrive with the smaller staff is this: there's a misconception, I believe, in our industry. What is the dollar amount that most roofing companies award their guys for hitting a year? A salesman, the average salesman, $1 million. $1 million. All right. So let's back up 15 years ago. What was the dollar amount 15 years ago that roofing contractors awarded their people for?
Oh no, 1 million.
1 million. Okay, so the average residential roof size 15 years ago was what? $6,000. Today, that same roof is now $18,000. So it's literally tripled in 15 years. The same roof.
3 million.
Okay, so what if I said, I'm not awarding my guys until they hit, say, 4 million. I think that, what are you doing with the rest of your day? Even, you know, especially in the commercial, the average job size is a little bit bigger, but even in the residential size. So you're telling me that average job is, let's call it 15,000. So these guys are selling 60 jobs a year in 360 days. So literally are selling almost a little more than a job a week, right? A little more than a job a week. What are we doing with the rest of our time? So we got very, very intentional a few years ago and said, like, we're not going to accept that. I'm not awarding a guy for selling $1 million. 15 years ago, you couldn't award a guy for selling, because that dude was selling 150 roofs.
Yeah.
He was selling 150 roofs. Now I'm awarding a guy that's selling 50 roofs. It's ludicrous, because we're accepting kind of mediocrity. So we come up with a number, and we're like, here's a path, and here's how you could go sell $4 million. And that path is actually $6 million for a few of my guys. Yeah. And here's how you do that. And you know what we're doing? I'm not working 90 or 100 hours a week. You know, my guys are working a regular job. Yeah. But when we go to work, we're actually working, because the average American, even if you're paying someone to work for you 40 hours a week, how many hours are they actually working? 28, 30?
Probably 30.
Call it 30, right? But what are they doing the other 10 hours? So now you take a salesman that you just kick out on the street. He's left to his own device. No one knows where the hell he's at or what he's doing. How many hours is he actually working? 5? Because remember, he's only selling one job. He's only selling one job that week. The hell else is he doing with his time? So we just kind of set that standard of expecting more, because like, we have good people. Here's a bar. Here's where you need to be. And so we set the standard high. And it's not like I'm working these guys 120 hours a week. Yeah.
Well, I love that, man. Thanks for sharing that. And thank you for being on the podcast. The podcast is Hook Better Leads, put on by hookagency.com. Check out the Commercial Roofing Academy. Check out roofersinrecovery.org. And Paul, appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, man.
All right. See you guys.